Hi there, and you are tuned into Maths with AJ Raj. Today's lesson is multiplication of fractions. We have 4/5 times 2/3. Now, boys and girls, the simple rule to remember when you are multiplying fractions is that we need to multiply the numerator of the first fraction to the numerator of the second fraction and the denominator of the first fraction to the denominator of the second fraction. Okay, if you remember that simple rule of multiplication of fractions, it becomes quite simple. Alright, now unlike addition and subtraction of fractions, we do not need to have a common denominator. We do not concentrate only on the numerators when we are multiplying. We do that when we are adding and when we are subtracting. But when we are multiplying, we concentrate on multiplying the numerators with each other and the denominators with each other. Okay, so there's a difference, and please learn that difference. Do not get confused. Okay, so 4 times 2 is 8 and 5 times 3 is 15. So we have the answer 8/15. Okay, so that's your answer. Right, now notice that 8/15 is already written in its simplest form. Always, when you are writing fractions, make sure that your answer is in its simplest form before continuing with your next question. Right, and it's as simple as that. Now we have another example. 4/12 times 3/5. Again, we follow the simple rule of multiplying the numerators with each other, and 4 times 3 is 12, and the denominators with each other, and that's 12 times 5, which is 60. Right, 4 times 3 is 12, and 12 times 5 is 60. Now notice, boys and girls, 12/60 is not written in its simplest form. If you know your multiplication tables really well, you will be able to notice that 12 and 60 have common multiples. Alright, there are many common multiples in 12 and 60. 2 can go into 12 and 60. Alright, remember when we simplify in fractions, we are dividing by a common multiple. Alright, so as I said, 2 can go into 12 and 60. 12 and 60 can be divided by 3, it can be divided by 4, it can be divided by 6, and it can also be divided by 12. Now this time I'm going to choose my highest multiple that can go into 12 and 60. That's because, boys and girls, if I have to or if I need to, I can divide by 2, but then I'll notice that I can still further simplify 6/30 and divide it by 2 again to get 3/15, and I carry on dividing it by 2. So I'm going to have to divide many times. But if you know your multiplication, as I said, if you know your multiplication tables, you can see that 12 is a multiple of 12 and 60. So I'm going to go with the biggest multiple straight away, 12 divided by 12 and 60 divided by 12. Remember, we only find a common multiple. That means a number that both the numerator and the denominator can be divided by. We don't want any remainders, okay? Otherwise, you won't be able to simplify. Okay, so 12 divided by 12 is 1, and 60 divided by 12 is 5. Now, 12/60 is written as 1/5, which is the equivalent and the simplest form of 12/60. All right, so 1/5 is the equivalent fraction to 12/60, and it's also written in its simplest form. Okay. Right, now boys and girls, look at 4/12 times 3/5. We have just told you that you say 4 times 3, which is 12, and 12 times 5, which is 60, and then we simplified it to get 1/5 as an answer. Now, if I look at the same question, I'm going to show you a little variation to the question. It's not going to change the answer. You're going to end up getting the same answer, but you're just going to do a little deviation, a little variation to the same sum to show you how you can do it in a different way. All right. Now, if I look at 4/12ths, instead of multiplying first, I can say 4/12ths, there is a common multiple that can go into 4 and 12. 4 can be divided by 4. 12 can also be divided by 4, and 4/12ths can be written as 1/3 in its simplest form. So instead of multiplying 4/12ths by 3/5, I can multiply 1/3 by 3/5. Okay, now boys and girls, when you are simplifying a fraction, you need to remember that if you find a common multiple that can go into a numerator and the denominator in a fraction, and you divide by that multiple, you will get an equivalent form of the same multiple. Remember, we cannot divide by a number that is not a multiple of both these numbers. It can't be a multiple only of one and not the other. Right, I hope I'm not confusing you there. Right, just to make it clearer, we need to simplify fractions and write its equivalent form by finding a common multiple that can go into both the numerator and the denominator. Okay, so 4/12ths written in its simplest form is 1/3. Now, boys and girls, if you have two fractions, and you notice that it is a multiplication operation in between these two fractions. That means you are multiplying these two fractions. You can also cross simplify. Cross simplify means you can simplify the numerator of the first fraction with the numerator of with the denominator of the second fraction, right, in a diagonal manner. That means you can find a common multiple in the numerator in the first fraction, and that same common multiple that can go into the denominator, that the denominator can be divided by in this second fraction. You can also do it in a diagonal way with the denominator in the first fraction and simplify it with the numerator in the second fraction. So it could work, instead of working in just one fraction with numerator and denominator, like you see over here, we divided the numerator and denominator by 4. You can divide the numerator and the denominator across fractions, all right, by the same number, and only if it is possible. Right, you must not divide if you are going to get remainders. Only if you notice that there is a common number that can go into the numerator and the denominator without remainders, then only you will divide and simplify. Okay, so we said instead of writing 4/12ths times 3/5, we can write 1/3, because 1/3 is an equivalent form of 4/12ths. It's a simplified form of 4/12ths. All right, times 3/5. Now we take the 3/5 from the same question and just rewrite it next to 1/3. All right, can you see that? Now, I did say you can go straight ahead and say 1 times 3 is 3. That means numerator times numerator, and denominator times denominator. 3 times 5 is 15, and then you will end up with 3 over 15. And what will you notice? That 3 over 15 can further be simplified and divided by 3 to get 1/5. Or before we even get to this stage, let's do a cross simplification. I notice that there's a 3 in my first fraction in the denominator, and there's a 3 in my numerator in the second fraction. And if I can cross simplify this 3 with this 3, that means find a common number that can go into both these numbers, and that is 3, I will end up with 1 times 1, because 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 3 divided by 3 is 1. So 1 times 1 and 1 times 5. 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times 5 is 5. And notice that my answers are the same. Okay, so just to recap, we can simplify a fraction by finding a common multiple that can go into the numerator and denominator of the same fraction. We can also cross-simplify across fractions by finding a common number that can go into the numerator and denominator across fractions from one fraction to the other, only if there's a multiplication sign in the middle of the two fractions. That means if there was a plus or a minus operation in between, we can't cross simplify. Just remember that, boys and girls. Just be very wary of that. Okay. Right. Now we have 3/5 of 25. Now, boys and girls, the word of is a commandment of multiplication when we have sums of this. Of can mean various things in different questions, but in this particular question we can use the of as a command of multiplication. So instead of saying 3/5 of 25, we can say 3/5 multiplied by 25. And now just remember, 25 is a whole number. And we are busy multiplying fractions. So I need to write 25 as a fraction. It is a whole number. It can be written as a fraction if I write it with a denominator of 1 over a denominator of 1. Now it means that 25 divided by 1 is 25. So we're not actually changing the number itself. We're just rewriting it in a different form. Right. So whenever you have a whole number and you rewrite it over a denominator of 1, it still remains a whole number, but it is written in the form of a fraction. Okay. Now, what do you think you should do first? You should multiply the numerators with each other and the denominators with each other. And 3 times 25 is 75. 5 times 1 is 5. Alright, just remember the of is a command of multiplication in a sum like this. So 75 over 5 can further be simplified. I said earlier you need to know your multiplication tables. So straight away you can notice that these numbers can both be divided by 5 to be simplified to 15 over 1. Now, if any number is written with a denominator of 1, it means 15 divided by 1 is 15. It remains a whole number. It can be written as a whole number without the divided by 1 equation. The same fraction can be done by first simplifying and then multiplying. If I cross simplify, that means I found a common number that can go into the denominator and numerator across fractions. Right, and that number is 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 25 divided by 5 is 5. So I will now have 3 over 1 as a fraction multiplied by 25 divided by 5 is 5. So 5 over 1 as the second fraction. And now if I have to multiply 3 times 5, I will get 15. And 1 times 1 is 1. And my answer is 15. The same as the first answer. Okay, now in this next question, we have a little deviation where I have a fraction of a mixed number. Now, boys and girls, a mixed number can be written as an improper fraction. Especially when we are multiplying, it will be much easier to have a numerator times a numerator and a denominator times a denominator, so we can change one 3/5 to an improper fraction to 8/5 by simply following the rule 5 times 1 is 5 and 5 plus 3 is 8. Okay, I'm going to do that one more time. 5 times 1 is 5 and 5 plus 3 is 8. So the numerator is 8, but the denominator is 5. It remains the same as the denominator in the question. Okay, so now we have 1/4 or 1/4 times 8/5. I changed 1 and 3/5 to 8/5. The rule now is to multiply my denominators and numerators with each other. So 1 times 8 as the numerator gives me a numerator of 8. And 4 times 5, which are my denominators, will give me a denominator of 20. Do you notice that there is a number that both the numerator and the denominator can be divided by? And that number is 2 or 4. Now remember what I said, you can divide by 2, but then you will have to divide by 2 again. So you can just simply one time divide by 4, because both these numbers can be divided by 4. 8 divided by 4 is 2 and 20 divided by 4 is 5. So your answer is 2/5. Okay, now 1/4 times 8/5. I'm taking the same question, but this time instead of multiplying first and then dividing, I am going to divide first. That means simplify first and then multiply. I noticed that my denominator is 4 in one fraction and the numerator in the second fraction is 8. So there is a common number I can cross simplify. 8 divided by 4 and 4 also divided by 4. There's a number that can go into the 8 and the 4. We cross simplify numerators and denominators across fractions when there is a multiplication operation. So here I have 1 times 2, because 8 divided by 4 is 2. And I have 1 times 5, because 4 divided by 4 is 1. So now this is 1 times 5. 1 times 2 is 2 and 1 times 5 is 5. And I end up with the same answer as 2/5. All right. Just to recap, boys and girls, the simple rule for multiplication of fractions is you need to multiply your numerators with each other and your denominators with each other. Also, when you come to any answer, you need to simplify your answer to its simplest form. You can also simplify your fractions first. You can either simplify the numerator and denominator of the same fraction, or you could cross simplify the numerator and denominator across fractions. All right, and then multiply. So multiply and then simplify, simplify and then multiply. Either way, you will end up with the same answer. I hope this video was informative and that you have learned from it. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Press the bell icon to get notifications of any new videos that I upload. And if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you for watching.